Hey guys, it's your Deborah, student, singer, songwriter, and everything else in between. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about my favorite TV shows, movies, and books. And today we're talking about Uglies because this movie is coming out and I decided to invest in the book. And I was bored for like a good half of the book until it got juicy. So I'm not going to do like a long review. I'm just going to give you guys the gist. I read this book so you don't have to. And honestly, I feel like it could be summarized within like 20 minutes. So we start off from this young girl called Tally's like world, basically. And she lives in Uglyville. That is literally the name of their town. When I first heard that, I thought it was a joke, but it's not a joke because the joke was on me. Okay, first, I do have something for y'all. A lot of people don't know, but while you're filming, you can have the most expensive camera in the world. If you don't have good color grading, your videos will never have that certain look that you're looking for. But fear not, that can be achieved with an LUT. So what is an LUT, you ask? An LUT is basically a color filter that you use on your images or videos. I love using LUTs, whether it's on my Instagram photos or on my videos in which I'm speaking right now. So what I've done is I've created some basic LUTs on my Etsy store in which you guys can buy for a really cheap price and experiment. LUTs can be used for anything, not just videos with your face, but also scenarios and also landscapes. And I also use it for my blogging channel as well. For example, this is what my face looks like without an LUT. I'm using my iPhone 13 right now to record this. And I mean, the colors are quite okay. It's just not the same look as I normally have. But this is me with an LUT. Do you guys see the difference? But I've created a basic LUT that you guys can use, especially if you have more darker or melanated skin, because when I was starting out with LUTs, that was a really big struggle for me to find like LUTs that actually enhance my skin tone. So if you guys are interested, head over to my Etsy store. But anyways, back to the video. So she's living in Uglyville, right? And she's 15 and literally their society is split into like Uglyville and like New Pretty Town. That's basically what you see is what you get. In their society, there are people called Uglies and then there are people called Pretties, right? And there's different classifications within the pretty groups and different classifications within the ugly groups as well. And of course, like little children are called Littlies. Very interesting name for kids, okay? You know, you could say it's a creative name. So you're called an ugly if you are like natural and you're natural born and you have natural features, and you become pretty when you have a surgery when you turn 16 with like, that's basically plastic surgery that makes you look a perfect way, like symmetrically, biologically, so to speak. You get the surgery when you're 16 and it turns you into a pretty. Now there's normally different types of pretties. There's like new pretty, there's middle pretty, and then there's old pretty, right? Or like, I guess older pretty. There's like pretty for older people basically. And what that means is just like in each phase, you get plastic surgery to make sure you don't age in different phases of your life, if that makes sense. So they start the surgery young so that like you don't have time for wrinkles, you don't have time for like fine lines to set in. They start when you're a child because that's when your features are like, I'm guessing really prime, because I remember in a part of the book she said that once she turned like after 20 years you can't get the surgery anymore and then you're fucked. So that's creepy. Anyways, also I want to stress the fact that all that information I'm giving you right now wasn't even discussed in like the first few chapters of the book. It took time for us to get there. You get Tally's point of view as this girl who just really wants to be pretty, like, and she has this friend, childhood friend called Paris, who they grew up together, and so he turned 16 and he got to be pretty, and now he lives in like this Garbo mansion, and that's literally the name of the mansion, and he's a pretty boy now, right? And the whole time she just wants to sneak over to go see him, to see what he's like in Prettyville. But the thing is that this book spends so much time describing how long it takes to get there. The fact that she's having to wear a mask called a pig mask because certain people are not allowed in, like if you're ugly, you're not allowed in Pretty Town, right? Unless there's a specific event in which you must wear a mask that literally makes you look like an animal. This drags out for so long that like I got bored after chapter 4, chapter 5. But anyways, Girly Pop goes to sneak off to see her best friend Paris in this world. And mind you, she is 15. I forgot to mention that. She is 15. She's about to be 16 very, very soon. And she just can't wait to see Paris, and she can't wait to be pretty, and she can't wait to stop being ugly. Which is crazy that being natural is being called ugly, but I guess that's the point of the book, to like show how the world sort of demonizes you for being natural and calling you ugly and telling you that there's a a specific beauty standard that you must follow to be pretty. I get it. The concept is not lost on me. It's just, it takes forever to get there. She goes to Garbo Mansion. She finally sees Paris. He's pretty, but he's a very different person than what he was. And when they were best friends before he became pretty, he had a scar on his like hand, and she had a scar on her hand. And so that was like their kind of thing. And the minute she sees him in like amongst the whole entire crowd, which by the way, she had to sneak in, like I said, a pig mask. And a lot of people were making fun of her and she almost got caught. So that happened. But that took literally so many fucking sentences. I was so over it. Anyway, so when she finally sees Paris, she notices that the scar on his hand is no longer there. And she now realizes that pretty people, once they get a surgery, it's not just surgery to enhance their jawline or their eyes, like a facelift or something. It is also like they literally get new skin, which is unhinged and insane. Also, it's important to mention that people in Pretty Town literally don't do anything besides party, look pretty, eat, and like go home. Do you know what I mean? Like that's literally, they really don't do much in their society. They're very vain and like superficial, but at the same time they're also very calm people. So we'll figure out why, but it literally takes us to the end of the book to get there, so I'll explain that later. Paris is like, oh, like what are you doing here? And mind you, he had every opportunity to go to see and visit her, because pretty people can go visit Uglyville, but ugly people cannot go visit like New Pretty Town. But he didn't do that because obviously he was enjoying himself and chilling, and like she was just so tired of just being by herself because that was her only best friend. So when they see each other, he's very like odd or like standoffish to a certain degree, but he still kind of recognizes her, and so he tells her like to promise him not to do anything stupid so that she could also become pretty and they can become best friends in New Pretty Town. And so she's like, okay. She promises him to stay out of trouble, and she tries to escape, but because she caused such a ruckus at the beginning, she had to try and escape by trying to like jump off. Is it the building? Is it the mansion? Is it the tower? She has to use like, I think it's like a rope or a parachute to come down, and she almost dies while doing that, but she doesn't, thank God. And she gets seen by a lot of people, but luckily no one has come to arrest her yet, so she's chilling for the meantime. One thing that I find very interesting in the book is that they call the sky really pretty, but then she also says that the sky looks like cat vomit, which is very specific. I guess there's like an underlining meaning there. It's just, I thought that was funny. Okay. She and Shay like cross paths. Shay is another girl who is also the same age. She has the same birthday as Tally, and so they're both in line to get surgery, and both of them came to see their like close friends who became pretty, and then they didn't get to see them afterwards. While Tally is trying to escape, I think from the look at the bottom, if I'm not mistaken, it looks like she jumped off, but really it was Paris that kind of pushed her off, which was a little bit unclear in the books, but like I digress. Shay is like, wow, like this girl is so brave to jump off. That's so cool. But that wasn't really the situation, but that's a theme you'll commonly see in this book. But yeah, anyways, Shay and Tally become friends. They bond over the fact that they both have people in New Pretty Town. Shay, unlike Tally, is not looking forward to getting surgery, and you notice that very quickly that she has alternative thought. She doesn't see this idea of becoming pretty as the end all be all, and she thinks that she doesn't need the surgery to be pretty. She's perfectly fine with her looks. Uglies have nicknames for one another based on their flaws. So for Tally, it's Squint, and for Shay, it's Skinny, because she feels like she's too skinny. Insane. Anyways, the two of them become friends, and they do like a lot of things called tricks, which is just like they go on their hoverboard, they go explore. Shay shows Tally what a roller coaster is, because in their world they don't really have that. There's very interesting things that they don't have in their worlds that belonged to the Rusties. The Rusties are supposedly like the human race before everybody decided to follow this new system of life, and so the Rusties were people who lived like 200-300 years ago, aka normal human beings, but then something happened and then their worlds got destroyed. Basically, I'll spoil it for you now because I was wondering what had specifically happened, and it didn't get revealed until the end of the book. Basically, the human world got destroyed because somebody decided to build or create a bacteria that was reactive in the air, and the bacteria normally used to be in oil, if I'm not mistaken, and then somehow, some way, someone it reacted with like the particles in the air, and it fucking blew up everything, and there was a humongous fire, and no one was prepared for it. The book basically does try and call out how human beings are very dependent on oil, using that whole like bacterium story, and the minute it touches air, like it blows up. So they're trying to like point at how like human beings were Rusties were super dependent on oil and using natural resources, but at the same time they love to genetically modify stuff. Anyways, that's why there's no more normal people, so to speak. It's because that civilization was destroyed a couple of 100 years ago. And now everybody to survive is living in this new system and this new way of life. Shay and Tally become friends and they become closer, but you can also see that in moments that they fight, Shay gets to a point where she says to Tally, you know what? Honestly, I don't think there's other ways to live. I've heard of this alternative way of living. And there's this person called David and I can show him to you. So they go out like outside of the normal borders of the city. And so Shay wants to show her this person, David. So she like lights, I think, is it a flint or a torch or something, but David doesn't show up on time, and Tally's like, oh my god, this girl's literally insane. What the fuck do you mean you don't want to be pretty? That's literally stupid. Why would you never want to be pretty? You are very tempted to get pissed at Tally, but then you remember that she's been brainwashed all of her life. So like, she really in her mind is like, how could you not want to be pretty? Like, being pretty is the end all be all. Like, why would you want to be ugly? Why would you want to make your life harder for yourself? Which is crazy. After this incident doesn't work out, Tally like doesn't comprehend fully that Shay actually like doesn't want to be a part of the society, and she thinks like, okay, Shay's just off the edge a little bit, but she'll still get the surgery. Until one day Shay decides to confess to Tally that she's going to leave and that she's never coming back. She decides to leave Tally a clue, a riddle on a piece of paper, and she tells her that I'm going to escape and, you know, you can come with me if you want. Here's the clue on the piece of paper. It's a bunch of riddles, and if you follow it, you'll find the way to where I am, to this new civilization, to this new place where you don't have to live like this. Tally, of course, doesn't take this, but Shay leaves anyway. Tally takes the note and Shay goes away, right? So Tally's a little bit lonely, but eventually the time comes for her surgery. Now, again, I will stress this point, between the time coming from her surgery and Shay leaving was so long in the books. It was so boring to me. That is why I really disliked this book for like a while. It took a lot for me to continue this book. It really did. Tally is ready to get her surgery, right? She's in line. She's like super excited to get this freaking surgery. Go, go, go. And then it doesn't work out because someone from this department called Special Circumstances comes to get her, and they're like, there's something wrong with your surgery, even though she hasn't had the surgery yet. And so she's taken to this place called Special Circumstances where she meets Dr. Cable. And Dr. Cable, she says, is like an older pretty, but then she has like hawk-like features. So that means she's just had so much plastic surgery. She literally looks like a hawk. It's crazy. Dr. Cable asks her about her friend Shay and tells Tally that they've been watching her and Shay the whole entire time that they were exploring, and that they know that Shay has gone to live somewhere else and they want more answers from her. But the thing is, Tally made a promise to Shay that she wouldn't say anything. So Tally says, no, I'm not going to tell you anything. And so Dr. Cable is like, well, then you're not going to be pretty. Bye. And sends Tally away. And so Tally coming back not being pretty is like a huge shock to everyone, including her parents, by the way, who were very, very sparse in this whole entire thing. Because in this world, because so many people are emotionally detached, parents are also equally as emotionally detached from their children as well. So you also notice that with Tally's parents. And when she comes back home and she's like crying, obviously, her parents come to visit her and they're like, babes, just tell Dr. Cable whatever she needs to know and you can become pretty. She's not fully convinced until Paris comes to tell her. But one thing I do find interesting about that parental scene is that Tally asks, okay, but can I come back home? Because I miss home. I'm sad. I've been crying every single day. And her parents literally are like, no. I mean, they don't say why exactly. They were like, oh, but like, you know, it's easier for you here. But the underlying truth is that she's not pretty and she can't be let in her home because her parents are middle pretty and she's an ugly. So she can't be in their town. She can't be in their little, I forgot the name of their town. Their town is also like a weird name, but she can't be there because she's an ugly. So she can't live in her parents' house. Crazy. Paris comes along finally after all this time to try and convince her, and he talks to her and they have a conversation, and he is like not fully aware of what happened, but he has heard a rumor that she went Special Circumstances, and she kind of tells him that like she made a promise to someone, and he was like, okay, but the most important thing is being pretty so we can be friends together on the other side, so do whatever you need to do to be pretty. And eventually Tally's like, you know what, fine, fuck it, I'll tell everyone. And so she goes back to Dr. Cable and she's like, you know what, listen, this is all the information I know, make me pretty. Except that is not Dr. Cable's plans, because Dr. Cable wants to make her go over to where everyone has escaped and travel over there so that they can find the rest of the new civilization and capture them. Tally obviously is upset about this because she's like, hey, you said I should tell you everything that I know and I could be pretty. But Dr. Cable was like, no, that's not exactly what I said. They give her all the gear she needs to be able to travel. So Tally travels and follows the riddle on Shay's piece of paper, which, by the way, Shay's piece of paper was also discovered by special circumstances. They just didn't let her know. I just had to include that. Tally travels over there and she has this pendant in which Dr. Cable has given her. And Dr. Cable says the minute like she's there, she should press the little pendant or like open it or unlock it. And well, they can come in a few hours and take over the whole entire new civilization. So Tally goes over there, right? She goes through a lot. I'm not gonna lie to you, she goes through a lot, and this is the first time she's ever had to be on her own, camp on her own. Like, it's very scary. She almost gets killed by like a helicopter hover thing, and then the second time round where she goes to sleep, she's in like a field full of like these specific beautiful white flowers. I forgot their name, but she's in this field, and then when she wakes up, like there's literally fire all around her, so she's almost burned to death as well. And the only meals that she has are like dehydrated meals that you can reactivate with water. And the only things that she had was spaghetti, as in spaghetti bolognese to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which sucks. So she's in this field and there's fire all around her. And then that same helicopter that disturbed her the first time comes by and she finds out that there's actually people in there. They're pretties, but they're called rangers. So rangers are like soldiers that are still pretty people, but they work together with the civilization that decides to live alternatively. However, they have an agreement in which the rangers do not know where the civilization lives to protect their identity. We find out later that that small like civilization that lives full of uglies, they're called Smokies. Actually, they call themselves Smokies and they live in this place called the Smoke. Again, the names are not creative, the names are weird, but I digress. Tally meets the rangers, they have a lot of discussions, but the most important part is that she learns that there is more, that there's a pretty that can have another type of job. And eventually, after finding the rangers, they drop her off to the right location and the Smokies come along. And the first person she meets that are part of the Smokies is Shay. And so they hug each other. But then Shay is right next to the person called David, who was supposed to show up earlier in the book, but he didn't on time. So she now sees like David, Shay, and everybody else, right? The thing is, these people don't know that she's actually working for Dr. Cable. And what they did is that they debug her hoverboard. But then like, because the pendant isn't activated, they don't like notice that the pendant has a bug in it. So she's a secret spy throughout this whole entire time. Now, what's interesting here, and this is when the book finally started getting juicy, is that like she is supposed to live with these people and like she's feeling a lot of guilt because it's like, first of all, these people are all uglies, but they don't really care. They're not living according to society. They live off the land. They actually cut down trees and they actually kill animals versus in their society, whereas you could just press something on the wall and you get food. That's not how they're supposed to live. She has to like take a bath in the stream for the first time, that kind of thing. So she's living with this like new life. It's new to her. She's processing all her thoughts. But then also Shay and David originally, she thought like they were together. Like she thought that David was really feeling Shay and Shay was feeling David. Wrong. Because as Tally continues on and she's telling people like how she survived her 2 adventures on the way here, and even though the story isn't adding up because she does lie about the timeline, a lot of people eat it up, right? They're like, oh, it's cool that you came out here all by yourself, because normally people don't come out by themselves, they go with somebody else. So the fact that she did that by herself to them is really cool, but again, they don't know that she had support to do so. While Shay is like really trying to feel up David really starts admiring Tally because he thinks that she's so brave. The fact that she came out here on her own, but also the fact that like she takes things seriously, quote unquote, like she realizes just how grave this whole entire thing is and how crazy it is. I don't know if that's a good enough excuse, but I digress. I just think he likes her. But the problem is that Shay really likes David. So then there becomes a love triangle, which is a problem. Also, I don't know the age of David because if I'm not mistaken, Shay and Tally are both now 16, but David is a little bit older. So I don't know. David low-key slowly starts falling in love with Tally, and Shay notices this. And what he does is that he gives her a pair of gloves, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but like giving people stuff in the society is a really big deal because they have so little resources that sometimes they even have to trade. So sometimes you can trade food, like the dehydrated food, for like clothing and for a sleeping bag and stuff. That's how valuable things are. So for someone to make gloves out of animal skin is a really big deal. And then like to give that to someone one is also a really big deal. So it was a big sign that he was really into her. So with that, Shay and Tally immediately have conflict because she's like, ever since you came here, David has been giving you the lookity look, and he stopped looking at me, which is kind of sad, but like, it is what's happening. Okay. So David is like really into Tally, and then he asks her to go meet her parents. Mind you, no one really knows that Tally is secretly a spy, except this person called Croy, who was suspecting her at the beginning because he was calculating the days that she was mentioning and it wasn't really adding up. But besides him, like, she's really just paranoid, trying to keep this secret. But anyways, David invites her to his parents' home, which is a very, very big deal, and she meets his parents. His parents are Maddie and AZ, and they're like older people, but then she said that they look a certain way. I don't know if she said that they look the same but there's something like strange about their look. And we find out that both of his parents, like, they used to perform surgeries, and they found out information one day. This is a huge secret, by the way, a huge secret that nobody else knows. They find out one day that some people have like incisions or like marks in certain areas of their body and other people don't. And there's certain people who have those marks that have like certain jobs, and the other people that don't have those marks don't really have important jobs in society. What they're trying to explain is that there's some people that are brain damaged, or like in their surgery, their brain gets tapped with so that they can become very docile and agreeable. And then there's some people whose brains aren't really tapped with so that they can have intelligence. Those are the people that works in special circumstances as doctors or as surgeons or things like that. Those are the people whose brains are actually like being used, versus everybody else, they're completely docile, which explains why nobody has complained about the society, why nobody has fought against the societies, because everyone has been made completely docile. When Maddie and AZ, David's parents, find this out, they like try and run away. But what we don't know is that Maddie was trying to low-key find a cure. And one thing they also did was reverse their surgery. So they took out a lot of like the plastic surgery, the plastic for their jaw enhancements, things like that, which is pretty big. And that explains why she was very confused about how the way that they look, because David does not look like that, because David has never lived in Pretty Town. Her and David finally leave David's parents' home, and David kisses her, and he's like telling her that she's beautiful, which is the first time that Tally has ever heard that about herself, and she can't really believe it, because literally all her life she's been called an ugly, and she's been told that she has to look a certain way to be pretty. David kisses her anyways, and then she asks like, am I more beautiful than Shay, which is a crazy thing to ask, and I thought that was really out of pocket. What else is a guy supposed to say to you if he likes you? I don't know. So she now realizes that if she was to call special circumstances right now, they would not only invade David's parents' lives, but also this whole civilization. And also she likes David. So what she does is she throws the pendant into the fire field that we talked about earlier, and she throws it into the fire, and she thinks, you know what, it's over, it's done with. I'm with David now, I'm part of this society. Whatever, we'll figure it out. Except, surprise, surprise, by burning the pendant, it activated the pendant, and special circumstances and basically the police show up at their doorstep the next day while they were sleeping, and it is of course a disaster. So a lot of people get captured. The Smokies get taken back to Dr. Cable, and so while they're trying to find plans to escape, one thing that does happen that is very interesting, because again, this part drew out so much as well. One thing I did find that was very interesting was that Shay, Croy, and a lot of the Smokies were captured, right? So while Tally and David were trying to sneak in, they are able to distract Dr. Cable and knock her unconscious, but then they see and they look ahead and they realize that Shay has been turned pretty. Not because she wanted to, because she was making the most noise and she was fighting the most. So yeah, that's very, very awkward. Tally also realizes that they've also tapped with her brain, because Shay becomes like a very different person, and she's very superficial and very just like not here the whole entire time, which is kind of sad, but it's also bringing conflicting feelings, you know, because Shay was the one person that didn't really want to be changed like at all, and it was done against her consent. While Tally was imprisoned with Shay, Croy, it is mentioned that Tally worked with Dr. Cable, and she wasn't tied up the same as everybody else, and I think something with her, like her handcuffs. Then unfortunately, David's father, AZ, because they were captured, was given a pill by Dr. Cable to reverse his memory, or like to erase his memory, because that's what they were trying to do with the captured Smokies. And by doing that, it killed him. And so Maddie, obviously his wife, is like distraught, and she's like really angry with Tally, and she practically blames him for his death, which is kind of unfortunate to put that on a 16-year-old, especially if you're like an older person, like you're in your 40s. Anyways, Dr. Maddie, after like 20 days after all this bullshit happens and they finally manage to escape, even though their smoky place has kind of been destroyed, she comes up with a like pill, basically. And with this pill, she wants to see if she can reverse all the effects of the brain damage that is caused by getting pretty surgery. And so she wants to test this out on Shay, but Shay doesn't want to do that. And Maddie cannot force someone to do it without their consent. So Tally, towards the end of the book, says, you know what? I'm going to go back to Pretty Town. I'm going to get the surgery. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to take this pill. Is that a logical decision? I'm not sure. I forgot to mention, it is when she decides to do this, that's when she tells David about the whole entire ordeal of what she was doing with Dr. Cable. So, this book was boring and then it got juicy, but then it became boring to me again. I understand completely like why this was a YA novel, because it talked about plastic surgery, like it talked about beauty standards, it talked about eating disorders. But at the same time, I really feel like it was really fickle. It felt so fickle compared to the YA books we were given, such as The Hunger Games, even Divergent. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, Divergent, because you guys know I love Divergent, but the first book really bores me, like the first Divergent book. That first book, Divergent, is more interesting than this whole book combined. I'm sorry, to me, I was really bored with this book, so maybe the movie will be very interesting. I just felt that it was very one note, and then adding the love triangle kind of also felt weird because they were really trying to establish something between Shay and David. And then also Paris just gets like completely forgotten in this whole entire thing. Maybe he comes back in the other books because this was a series, but I just felt that it was so fickle and like so one note. I felt like also the names didn't really help as well. Uglyville, like New Pretty Town. It felt like the author really didn't care. There were some interesting themes, and considering the fact that this was targeted to YA, I mean, I get it, but at the same time, I felt like it could have been more complex than this, Also, I felt like there were so many things that could have been explained early in the book that could have made me not want to put this book down. But overall, you guys let me know how you feel down in the comments below. I was just very much over it at the end of it all. I'm excited to see this film, and by the time I post this could be before or after my film review, so you never know. You guys tell me how you're feeling down in the comments below. I will see you guys in my next video. I just wanted to give a little book review. And yeah, I will see you guys in my next video. Okay, bye. Oh my.